Welcome to On the Chain. This is Chip. Jeff has a family commitment and has the night off. What are we going to talk about tonight? Well, let's take a look at this. The end is near. Do we want clarity or do we want enforcement? Are we going to get clarity or are we going to get enforcement? So that's really the question. And despite everything you heard with the SEC and zero clarity, $1 billion business is happening where? Inside the US. We're going to drill into that a little bit later. You guys ready to kick this thing off? I don't hear anything. A little bit louder. Come on. You can scream. If I'm sitting here looking at my computer, you guys can scream back. Why not? If you're in your car, let it loose. Let's go. You ready? Let's do it.
Welcome to On the Chain.
What's going on, everybody? Really good to see you guys tonight. Where is everybody? You know, I kind of got this posted a little bit later, which is if it's more than a half hour or less than a half hour before, then the notices don't go out on top of the notices not going on anyway. But anyway, we'll deal with that. But I wanted to jump right into it here. Drop where you're from, drop the country, drop the city, drop wherever you want. As long as we recognize where it is, we'll throw that up there as I'm kind of going through it. As people are piling in here, we'll go ahead and talk about that as well. But I always like to see where everybody's coming in from. Also, too, you know, we really appreciate you joining us. Your contribution's huge. So whether it's a comment, we can't get to them all, Jeff and I, but even worse when I'm doing it myself because, you know, there's not anybody to sort of fill that gap and look at the comments. So I'll be looking and doing the best and managing. So guys, throw that stuff in there. Mark is saying, screaming. I love it, man, when you're screaming. Sometimes I'll be in my car and I'll just start making loud noises. And what ends up happening is I start laughing hysterically. And I'm like, I hope nobody's looking at me because it might be the dumbest thing you've ever seen. If you see me just rolling down the road, I'm going to stoplight. I just start making these grunting sounds. And I don't know, it's my way of like humoring myself and make myself laugh a little bit. But I wanted to start today's show off with a really gripping video from John Deaton, because when we think about this SEC v. Ripple case, you know, it's not just another enforcement case. It's not just another case that, well, ho-hum, you know, it's one of those things. This case is monumental, and you could definitely say it's the case of the century. Now, we're not that far into the century. We're 20% in, 23% in, you could say. But definitely is the case of this century so far. And if you go back and when you listen to what John Deaton says here, if we go back to 1946 and then we couple it with today, that's how far we're talking. That's how monumental this one is. If you look at the last time we got something like that, which is Supreme Court in 1946 in the Howey case, that was a completely different story. We got people jumping in from Cleveland, from Chicago, Chi-Town, Columbus, Ohio. A lot of people from Ohio. LA's in the house tonight. Clearwater, Florida, down in our neck of the woods like that. Cache Valley, Utah. Darcy's coming in from the Serengeti. Okay. If you are Jersey Shore loves XRP. And guess what, Mark? We love the Jersey Shore as well. John Deaton is a hero. That's XRP Market. Appreciate that. If you guys see that little squiggly next to somebody in the chat, that means they are a supporter of the channel. And again, there's a couple ways you can support the channel. You can go to onthechain.io and you can support us there. Otherwise, you can join the channel if you wish, but don't worry about it. The content's always free. The easiest way to share or to help the channel is to share it with your family, your friends, and maybe even an enemy. Why not, right? I mean, we have nothing to lose there, really. Oregon's in the house. Beautiful. Michael Murphy here. Gotcha, man. Adelaide, down under, Australia, beautiful. Love our Aussie friends in here. San Diego, good evening. Jim D. And let's jump in this video, but I want you guys to listen pretty closely because if we think about this, this is a monumental case. Let's listen in here.
This decision gets bigger and bigger. So I just want you to think about those of you out there who are thinking about this. Why hasn't she ruled yet? What I doubt very seriously that Judge Torres has ever felt the pressure that she's feeling right now. Ripple is sending, hey, Judge, look what the judge in Voyager said. Look what the Judge Gorsuch of the Supreme Court said about fair notice. All of these things are happening after. She's getting more information. Look at the SEC's conduct. Look at Binance. Look at the CFTC. all of this stuff is happening in the background where you got guys like me saying the regulatory clarity is going to come from her. You got the library decision. You don't think she's aware of all this? So this decision is as big of a decision that this judge has ever faced. Think about it. What other decision is as big as this decision when it comes to global trade and finance in modern history? I've said before that this case is the most significant non-fraud SEC enforcement action since 1946. So that kind of pressure, personally, I don't blame Judge Torres for being very careful of how she words this decision, because A, if it goes against Ripple, she knows it's going up to a conservative court. And if it's for Ripple, she has to justify it and all those things. So just be patient. We're almost at the end. Everybody have a great night. See you next week.
Now, this is really poignant right here. I mean, I think this is really good advice because I've seen so much, I think Jeremy Hogan deferred it to, when both John Deaton and Jeremy Hogan were here on the chain, I think it was December. It was our second anniversary show. We won't be doing a third anniversary show marking the dropping of the SEC v. Ripple case. But when both of them were here, they were also figuring out, like, when will it go? I think I heard March, April. And then Jeremy Hogan chimed in and said something to the effect of, let's go with Jimmy Filan. Let's see what he thinks. And I'll defer to him. Jimmy was thinking it would be in March. And everyone's like, March, it's the date. Yeah, there's a target date. But don't forget, even in the library case, it went 2 weeks beyond that. So you can't really put a lot of stock in, well, there's a drop dead date. I think listening to John Deaton, we've heard things like he's a hero. John Deaton personally probably saved the day with this entire case, because the SEC probably never thought that, they probably thought there's some fanboys and, maybe there's an XRP army. Maybe they knew about it on the peripheral. But what they didn't count on is 76,000. And that's just the people that signed up. They didn't count on over 3,000 people signing off, getting it stamped and everything. They didn't count on that. And they certainly didn't count on this much hoopla. And I think the wake-up call was that very first hearing. I think it was 3 months. I think it was like March or April of 2021 when that first hearing was. And I think they blew out the amount of people that could actually log into it. So that was also pretty funny, because I think the next time they had a slot of 4,000 and they filled that up. So that's when I think the big tip-off was, hey, this is not your regular run-of-the-mill case. This is something big. And of course, if you have like a big murder trial or some kind of maybe a fraud case, which, by the way, this is not a fraud case, but let's suppose you did have something like that. This is not that. And so I think that John Deaton's making some really big points. If you are Judge Torres, this is going to weigh heavily. And the distinctions he's making here is, look, get off her back, because I saw him hit somebody pretty hard that went after Jeremy Hogan. John Deaton did that, was complete, calling Jeremy Hogan a clown show and this and that, completely disrespectful. And again, it's a best guess. And just because you have a target date doesn't mean that target date's going to be hit. And I think the original dates that I heard, March, April, even could go into May, although I think it probably will be around this month. But the one piece that John Deaton's pointing out is that the monumental size of this case, the implications, the far-reaching implications, this is a case that's going to decide for all of crypto. Why is that, you ask? Because the morons in Washington can't figure it out. They can't get off their behinds. Legislation was rolled out 3-4 years ago in the Token Taxonomy Act. They still cannot get out of their own way. As Jeff always says, they're tripping over their own shoelaces. That's because Jeff and I reached behind them and secretly tied them so when they got up, which was a fun joke when you did in school. I saw somebody here from Wales. I actually drove up the coast of Wales in a car, saw some castles, had a great time, and stayed in a B&B, and I saw a ghost. That's right. I actually saw, I don't know what you call it, a ghost. It was something. It was a figurine, but that's what's cool about staying in these old places. And then when I got my new room and looked in the front of it, I was like, oh, I see. There's a cemetery around here. That's fun. So there's a lot of history going on over there, man. Here in the U.S., it's like, we might say something like, that thing is 100 years old. Like Miami just celebrated its 100th birthday. You're like, 100th birthday. It's like, we've been around for thousands of years over there in Europe. So Anyway, guys, drop it in. Mr. Bullish, Mr. K is in here today. What's going on? Hit the like, everybody. He says, very cool. Let's jump in this next story here. I think this is let's see. I wanted to cover this one right here. This is our pal Mark Phillips, who's probably been on the chain more than anybody else. But Mark put this tweet out there. He said, U.S. government is forcing the delisting of tokens, the debanking of exchanges, suing projects and company executives, spreading false narratives to scare away depositors and investors. This coordinated attack is designed to deliver the crypto industry to Wall Street fat cats. And of course, he put a Wall Street fat cat up there, which is great. I don't know where he got this illustration, but this is funny. This is let me zoom out of this a little bit so you can see it. So it's one of these fat cats smoking a cigar. See, big old cigar, stogie. See, big old fat cat. So you probably Googled fat cat on Wall Street, and this is what came up. Got some buildings in the background, a big old fat cat. Caricature of a fat cat smoking it, but he's making some good points here. Early days, again, when crypto was like a novelty and nobody really thought anything about it. It's like, it's crypto, nobody cares. Bunch of kids playing, goofing around over. But then when it started getting some notoriety, and then when we saw Bitcoin break through that 65,000 mark, from being doesn't have any value, it doesn't have any use case, it doesn't have this, that, whatever you want to say about it. And we saw even XRP, that 2018 bull run, hit 365-ish on a rumor, by the way, that it was going to be listed on Coinbase. And so when we add all of this stuff up, there's no pressure there. The pressure comes in when we start getting high inflation, when things start going south, and when people are looking for a way to really figure out, like, well, how are they going to hedge their bets? What are they going to put their money into? Okay. You've got fiat currency in almost every nation that's being devalued. You got the US currency, which you got the BRICS nations coming together. And the BRICS nations, by the way, got a video coming up with Gary Gensler addressing that back from 2019. But you have all these people joining BRICS. Now, here's the funny thing about that. My take on that, this is just a feeling that I have. Guys, don't take it too seriously. But if I had to think about it, when I think about the BRICS nations coming together, now one of the things that they're really interested in doing is a CBDC. There's been no bones about it. Everybody's talked about it. You have China talking about the digital yuan, right? And then when we think about what would they actually do, what would actually happen if these BRICS nations, they come together, and there's a lot of chatter and talk about creating this new world currency. Like, what would that look like? You can almost bet that it's going to be something that's programmable, something that's controllable, and control the populace. Something like, I don't know, let's say a CBDC, a central a central bank digital currency, which again may or may not happen. But the funny thing is that the Federal Reserve, if the Federal Reserve ever here got audited, I'm just curious. I'm wondering what their balance sheet looks like. I'm wondering what they're invested in. And since it's a system built on debt, and since they're getting paid back at an alarming rate, I wonder how much they really have in the positive comment. I wonder if they have enough to pay off the debt of the United States. I wonder what they're invested in. I wonder what countries they're invested in. I wonder what's actually going on behind the scenes. Now, I can speculate all day about this, and you can too. You can drop comments in there. Funny thing about this is what's your central bank up to? Has your central bank been up to doing like some dirty work? You don't know. If you haven't audited your central bank, then it's pure guesswork, right? You don't know. But if I have to take $1 from the Fed or my central bank and borrow that, then I got to borrow another $1 so I can pay the interest on that. And that big loop happens over and over again. What do we end up with? We end up with a massive mess. So I'm just guessing, like, what do you guys think about this? What are your thoughts? If you're watching on the rewatch, drop it down in the comment. But is this a possibility? Have they been has there been a big hoard? Have they been investing and having return on their money someplace else? Are they getting 18 to 20% somewhere else? Are they loaning out to other nations? Now, the reason I ask all these questions, you're like, well, come on, Chip, that's impossible. It probably is impossible, but you never know because we don't know. That's why an audit of the Fed is going to be probably paramount. It's imminent. It's coming. And if you look at what some of the candidates, or one of the candidates, the one that just was just in New York, has been saying all along and talking about the Federal Reserve and talking about things going down, to me, it feels as though the Fed is on very, very short life supply. It's a system built on debt. It's getting crushed. We're getting crushed. And so what happens when this BRICS nation that's sitting out there and they're all happy and yay, we don't need the US anymore. It's not the reserve currency anymore. Okay, great. So what happens if the US goes ahead, audits the Fed, moves away from the Fed, and actually creates the world's very first sovereign currency that isn't a CBDC, but is owned by the people and for the people and not a third-party entity? If you look on the dollar bill, it says it's a federal note. It's not a US federal note. So in that regard, let's look in the let's get back to that in a second. Kevin Land, what's up? We're not going to the show in Vegas. We won't make it out there this time, but it's bound to be a great show. I did talk to Brad Kimes about that. Brad did invite us, and he was really gracious in inviting us and said he put up on stage. But I've got a family thing going on then, so timing didn't work for me. So no, we will not be in Vegas, Kevin. But again, I hope it's a very successful show. K-HUD, what's up? Appreciate that support. When Coinbase tells you about a 10-year-old account with 0.46 BTC and then sends it to you, whoa, what's this? Did this actually happen to you? You had a 10-year-old account with a half a Bitcoin in there? Sounds pretty crazy, but man, how nice is that? If that happened to you, oh, wow, very sweet. But let's get back to this whole thing with the Federal Reserve. I just feel like we can't, there's no way we can continue on the path we're on. We cannot continue to, we saw Janet Yellen last week was talking about the administration's budget, Biden's budget, up to 52 trillion, right? We're at 32 trillion now. And is that sustainable? There was not even a blink of an eye that it wasn't. And believe me, we're beyond that, right? What are we going to do with a $52 trillion debt when 32 trillion is about 30 trillion more than any country should be taking on right now? And we're just setting ourselves up for failure. It's completely chaotic and failure here. So let's jump to this. So I kind of teased this a little bit at the very beginning. What I like about this story is it kind of runs counter to the narrative. So check this out. Ripple president reacts to multi-billion-dollar success in a key region. So Monica Long, here, let's go look at there. There's Monica. Hey, Monica. So Ripple president Monica Long commented on the latest report from the company, a key partner in Mexico. So Mexico, you guys know Bitso, published earlier on Live Coins. In particular, Long noted the company's success capturing a large share of the remittance market between the U.S. and Mexico through its crypto for business service. Now, if you think about this, between the U.S. and Mexico, we think about we're in a trade agreement. We got the North American trade agreement. It's Canada, the new U.S. and Mexico. We make up North America. So our neighbor to the south and the United States, we're talking about this incredible amount of remittance going back and forth. And so as a reminder, Bitso and Ripple have been working together on cryptocurrency transfers for several years in that time. The Mexican company's become a key partner for Ripple in the region and is one of the largest users of the services. Again, this Backdrop XRP has become almost 60% of Bitso's trading volume, which has overtaken Bitcoin and Ethereum combined. And so if you think about that, I mean, that to me is massive as well, that it's that 60% of all of its trading, Bitso, and it's also overtaken any either Ethereum or Bitcoin trading, which I find to be pretty big. But again, there's a lot of going in there when we talk about the remittance. There's a lot. Let's go back into this. So according to the Mexico crypto company's release, thanks to Ripple and other key partners, they were able to transfer 3.3 billion between the two countries. And this is just in 2022 alone. And if you think about it, it's real world utility, says Long, and the corridor between the US and Mexico sees tens of billions of dollars in payments every year. So that's just a small trickle of what's really there, but we're starting to see that pick up. And 3.3 billion, what's that going to be next year? 8 billion, 10 billion, 12 billion. We're going to see this kind of pick up almost everywhere. And Aaron Sayers, who's the managing director of the Americas at Ripple, also noted that Bitso's successful report. He said that Ripple enjoyed Bitso's success and the two companies intend to continue their partnership. And why wouldn't they in cross-border crypto payments and connect more businesses in Latin America to the network? And his colleague on the other side, Santiago Alvarado, one of the vice presidents of Bitso, also expressed his intention. I love the way this is written, by the way, of companies and user organizations, noting 73% growth over the past year, which I would imagine next year is probably going to be well over 100% at the rate we're going right now, which is just absolutely astounding if you think about it. Let me take a little sip of my beverage here because I've been bloviating nonstop over here. Let's go. Now, what are the manners, Toby? Where are your manners at all? What's up, Toby? Glad for you to pop in here today. Alex Yeet says countries will exchange their own money. No more dollar in the middle. Countries don't have Nostro and Vostro accounts yet, although India is setting one up. So it's going to go out. It's going to go offer on-demand liquidity, right? That's exactly right. But the whole idea of trading in their own currency, probably. I mean, there probably be some preferred currencies there, but that's what we're going to see when we think about BRICS. That's what it's more or less going to come down to. And where are my? Oh, there's stories over here. Let me jump in the grab bag and see what I have tonight. Oh yeah, this is a good one too. So speaking of CBDCs, let me grab this here. Let me speak. Here we go. Now we've heard all this before, right? What do the nations always tell us when they start rolling out a CBDC? Don't worry, we got your back. We know that you're concerned about the programmability. Yeah, we know the privacy might be a potential issue, but no, we're the government and we're here to help. It's all going to be great because why wouldn't you trust us? It's not like we misrepresented anything in the past. It's not like we told you to do things that were mandatory that didn't need to be mandatory. Trust us, right? We're good for it. It's kind of what they keep saying. So if we go to, we take a look at this here, the digital pound CBDC won't be programmable to avoid government control perceptions. And I love when I start seeing articles like this because they're just not that believable, right? So last week, Katie Fortune, senior manager of the central bank digital currency unit over at the Bank of England, suggested that the digital pound will not include government-enabled programmability functions to avoid misconceptions about the government overreach. I mean, misconceptions? I mean, what are they talking about here? Like, this is pure government fiction right here, okay? Do you guys, let me know in the comments here. Let me know on the rewatch. Let us know in the comments. Is this something we should be worried about? Do we take them at face value when they say, don't worry about it? It's not going to be programmable. We understand about the privacy piece of it. I don't know. Personally, I need a little more convincing because I'm not really buying it. And you know what always happens? The one part they always target up front is the one part they never honor, right? They want to tell you about the one part. What they're doing is they're foreshadowing that one piece that you're so nervous about, they're not going to come through with. That's kind of where they're at on this whole thing. So the issue of programmability is a sensitive one in CBDC discussions. Yeah, okay, it's sensitive. How about there should be no programmability? And this whole thing of programmability in itself. So if you take out the programmability of a central bank digital currency, what do you really have? You have the same thing that I have now on my phone. Pull this out of my pocket. I look at it. It's a bunch of numbers. Now, how do we know this? Well, we just saw 3 banks collapse recently, right? How did the banks collapse? Well, they didn't have enough fiat to cover. Now, we know SVB, why they didn't have enough to cover, because they were too busy investing in government bonds. When the rates went up, they were losing their shirts. But the problem was the bank run. If everybody at even your local bank wants to pull the money out, there's not enough fiat currency to cover it. So what's changed all that is the fact that I've got a phone, and here in the US, we have something called Zelle. I can send it somewhere, I can move it somewhere, and I can do it with a touch of a button, right? Now, it's not going to be instantaneous. Same with Zelle. It's an agreement here in the United States between banks. And what that says is that we're all gonna just agree that we'll send you the money. The remittance still takes 2-3 days, but it doesn't matter. It's this agreement. They're floating money back and forth. But as a consumer, I'm like, hey, I can pay a contractor, click, but in actuality, that money doesn't actually get there for another couple of days, which is it's not a workable long-term solution. And what they're saying here is that the usual argument, because the government issued digital currency, would be a de facto legal tender. Therefore, anyone would have to accept that CBDC should be simple, standardized, and not restricted. So that's the case I'm making. So what's the difference? And if we, I mean, are we, so instead of, we have a new narrative, we're not printing money anymore. We're just pressing buttons, which is how you print the money in the first place. Because do they actually print the fiat currency when they want to manifest $2 billion, when they want to manifest $1 trillion? Do they really print it, or is it all magical with numbers? So what's the distinction here? If we're going to take a CBDC and we're going to call it a de facto currency, and it's going to be acceptable everywhere, and if it's not programmable, what makes it any different than what we see today? So is this just another clever way in a narrative to say, well, I guess we'll just be printing, we'll be just manifesting more value that's a fiat, but this time it's digital. So that's different, because we still won't run up the debt, right? And if you think about a CBDC, it's still with the central bank. Nothing has changed there. It's not sovereign. It's not for the people. It's not by the people. It's still a debt instrument. So it says, however, programmability functions could limit usability and impose rules on how people are allowed to spend their money. The Bank of England believes that these functions were introduced by design that could feed people's misconceptions and reduce trust in the system. So this is the funny part about this whole story, this line right here. The Bank of England believes that if these functions were introduced by design, because this is how CBDCs are designed, it could feed on misconceptions. So are they telling us that if we do enable these, you've got misconceptions about how this really works and reduce the trust in government? I'm sorry, but anything you're doing now, if you open your mouth, you've already reduce the trust in what you're going to say, especially after the 3 years we've just been through. So what we can't have with public money is some sense that I might decide you're not allowed to spend that on what you want to spend it on because the government doesn't approve of what you're doing. This is called telegraphing. This is called telling you your worst fear and that they're going to do it. But don't worry, they probably have misconceptions about it. I mean, would the government really tell you what they approve and they don't approve? I mean, would the government actually cancel you because you said something that was disagreed upon? I'm sure they wouldn't do that. This is so funny how they telegraph this. And so like the digital euro, the digital pound, let me scroll up here, would not be programmable at its core, but programmability can still be implemented by the private sector. Okay, so how does this work exactly? So you've got a central bank digital currency, and the central bank's not gonna enact it, but the private sector is. This makes no sense. Is this a scapegoat? Is this how you do it? Hey, we didn't do it. It was another third-party entity that's disconnected from us, and this is how a lot of times governments get around the censorship. They don't censor directly, but they kind of help somebody who looks like a university actually do the dirty work. This happens quite often. So it says a two-tier model with the private sector layer in the middle could build on Bank of England's infrastructure. Misfortune argued this way it would be private firms that deal with end users. This would allow the Bank of England to support innovation while maintaining independence. Okay. I'm calling BS on that. When has the Bank of England, or any central bank for that matter, been open to innovation? Because last time I checked, they're trying to crush the digital assets, right? We got choke point 2.0 happening in the US. We have it happening in other places. Maybe it's a little more subtle because they do have the clarity. I'm not buying that at all. And she also went on to say that referred to CBDCs as potential bridging asset between two different forms of money. Responding to a question how CBDCs might interact with things like Bitcoin and stablecoins, she reflected on today's mixed ecosystem. And quote says, what we have today is that Santander account, and I can go to a cash machine, take out that same cash that my friend with the Barclays account takes out. It's sort of a bridging asset between them. I'm not so sure this is a good example of analogy, but I guess trying to make it available to lay people. Yeah, I would think that if you go Santander and you're sending money to Spain and you're interoperability between two, yeah, we already have that. So I don't get what they're proposing here. Misfortune believes that CBDCs can become a powerful tool in the world of stablecoins and other digital forms of money, particularly due to the risk of fragmentation. She argued that the goal should be for money to have the same level of uniformity as electricity, which has become a neutral public good. Okay, let's face it, she's not doing so great in the analogy department. I get she's trying to make, I don't know if you would compare utility of having lights in your house, heat in your house, whatever it may be, to currency. I don't know if I'd put those on par with each other, but okay. Lastly, Misfortune briefly touched on privacy and fraud prevention trade-offs. That's weird. Imagine seeing the word trade-off in an article about CBDCs where they assure us, trust us, it's all going to be okay. She noted that illicit transactions, identity theft, and other fraudulent activities are important concerns for individuals, but preventing these crimes requires a degree of involvement and identification that will be different than physical cash payments. See what they just did right there? Again, it's always these illicit. It's like there's bad things going on in the world, but don't worry, we're here to help you. We're going to protect you. We're going to rescue you. And well, this erases the first part of the conversation when they say it might some degree of an identification that's called your privacy. So your privacy will be compromised because, well, we have these illicit transactions happening and these bad people out there. CBDCs will not be anonymous money, Misfortune said. However, the objective is the central bank and the government would not be able to access this information. Yeah, right. Okay. And this would be done by a private sector layer. So this is very clever the way they've done this. This article is complete and absolute bullshit. But if you guys want to buy into this whole thing, these CBDCs, they're out to help us. However, it's a not anonymous money. Well, let me ask you a question right now. If I go over to Hans Loaded and he flies over here, lands in Miami from South Africa, and we exchange fiat currency. It doesn't have to, it could be in any denomination. It could be in any fiat currency. It doesn't have to be US or South African. Does anybody know about it? It's anonymous, right? That's the whole thing with fiat currency. So that's the other thing where this is another misnomer that they always capitalize on, and why I'm so against these CBDCs, because they're pitching it. But again, they're no different than what we currently have now. It's just a number, but they're trying to pitch it as something good. But then what they're saying is that, well, don't worry, it won't be anonymous. If it's not anonymous, and the objective of the central bank and government wouldn't be to access that layer, then why are you telling us about it? And why does somebody, which is a private layer, why do they have access to that? So it's okay if the government can't access it, but the private sector layer is much more trustworthy. That is, by the way, contracted by the government. Just got to read between the lines. And a lot of these articles we see out there going out there and so-calling the benefits of the CBDC. Gosh, we'll be so much better off if we only had a CBDC. Let's see what we got going on in the chat here, guys. Yeah, here's a good one here. Jim D says, yeah, energy use is a display of national wealth. Matt LaRoche. What's up, Matt? Good to see you in here. And then Matt also says, everything bases back to energy, securities, and consumption. Yeah, it's funny how that works, right? Jim D also has a good comment here. Talking to Toby, says all the so-called democratic nations are just a geopolitical turf divvied up with the global money control that defines profit and taxing fiefdoms among the syndicate. By the way, if you guys heard this a lot lately, oh my gosh, don't do that. That would be against democracy. That would be a violation of democracy. That's going to single-handedly kill democracy. And when I hear that, I hear like, well, is it really going to kill democracy? And how many so-called democracies, are there? We're a constitutional republic in the United States. And I always hear these officials, these so-called politicians talk about that will destroy democracy. Well, in a constitutional republic, we especially the way we vote for a president here, it's not the majority rules, which is what the democracy is, but they're always touting that word, democracy, CBDCs. to me, that just says, hey, you're crushing our little click that we have over here. You're crushing our back end controls. You're crushing us like you would crush somebody's head. And so it's that little code word they always like to use, has nothing to do with democracy, but you just basically barging in on their system and their way of doing things the way they've always done things. But if you ruin democracy or ruin the way they've been doing things, then it's a big deal. But it's always funny how that has nothing to do with so-called democracy. What else? See, what else do we have here? Yeah, so talking about this too, this was an article, the de-dollarization has begun. Here it is right there. Last week, China and Brazil reached an agreement to settle trades in one another currencies. Over the past 15 years, China replaced the U.S. as the main trading partner of the resource-rich Brazil. And such a shift may have been inevitable, but with the context of recent circumstances, this appears to be yet another series of recent blows at a central role of the dollar in global trade. As the world's reserve currency, the US dollar is essentially the default currency in international trade, not so much anymore, but the switch from dollars to yuan, real settlement basis in Chinese to Brazilian trade is only the latest in a growing trend. Discussions are more politically neutral to reserve currency that have gone on for decades, and it goes on, blah, 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 blah. Let's see, there was one point in here that I wanted to get to. Yeah, so it talks about, this part right here. Nevertheless, a conference in New Delhi last week focusing on increased cooperation between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa touched on such a plan. Variations of such a currency order have been dubbed the Bretton Woods 3. So the last time we had Bretton Woods was when the U.S. currency became that global sort of standard coming out of World War II. And now they're calling it the Bretton Woods 3. But it certainly won't be in Bretton Woods. But again, I guess the name will stick. And it says some non-commonality proposals bear a curious similarity to the since discarded Facebook currency plan called La Libra. And then later it was called Diem. And then later it was called Dead because it was DOA, dead on arrival. And there's no way that Facebook was going to get by with having this sort of a currency and sidestep everything else. And you know what's really funny? When I look at El Salvador, I just look at so the U.S., believe this or not, the U.S. just sanctioned El Salvador. You want to know why? Because they went in and locked up all the criminals and they reduced the crime by 80%. It was like 90% crime. That's like they've reduced it by such an exorbitant amount because they took the criminals and actually put them in jail. And so for some reason, the U.S. criticized all this and sanctioned them. But you know who's really mad? The WEF, the World Bank, because the World Bank said, we're not going to help you implement this plan of Bitcoin being a currency. Well, look what's happening in El Salvador. It's thriving, right? It's thriving. You got a president, Bukele, who's just like, see you later, stupids. That's what he's saying. See you, stupids. We don't care about you. And what he's really doing is he's taking control of the country and not bending the knee to the World Bank or the WEF, who wants to come in and control not only him, but his people and his country and say what you can do and what you can't do. And what they were looking to happen was to crush them, right? Not give them any support, pull out support. And guess what? The country is still flourishing. So I love this play right here. That's big cojones right there. That deserves a big shout out. And also I love when he tweets in English and tells everybody off. He goes after everybody. You know, there was somebody running this country too that was very much like that really got a lot of attacked quite often because, you know, orange man bad and mean tweets and all that. Now we got unintelligible tweets. I saw one yesterday from the resident in the White House that was just a bunch of I don't know what it was, but could have been a real tweet. It's hard to actually know exactly what it might have been. I don't know. Matt LaRoche says, I reckon Russia could say to Japan, we'll give you back those 4 northern islands that we've had control of since World War II if you sign up to BRICS and dump your U.S. treasuries. Yeah, that's kind of how it works, right, Matt? I mean, it's like, so a little bit of backroom play, you know, get a little bit of power. But, you know, what they're ultimately going to come up with is going to be some form of control. I don't know what that looks like exactly, but it's going to be something, right? It's going to be some kind of a CBDC. They're not just going to be freewheeling. Something's going to happen there, and it'll be interesting. But it'll be interesting to see. Now, is the U.S. completely out? So what if the U.S. is in the world current reserve currency? Is it a big deal? Look, the U.S. still a big trade partner. The U.S. still a pretty dominant force. And what's going to happen when you trade with the U.S. and what happens when the U.S. buys stuff? Are they going to trade? They're going to do it in your currency? Probably not. So there's also countries out there too that are like, well, we'll kind of wait and see what happens. We're just going to like sit back. We're not saying it's a bad idea, but we're just going to wait and see what happens. So it's not like, but they make it out to be like the entire world's jumping on it. Yeah, you have India, you have Brazil, big countries jumping in. But I'm not sure it's all roses and unicorns. I think there's going to be some kind of something coming on us. I'm not 100% buying that it's going to be this perfect everything. And then we think about digital assets and we think about tokenization. This is an interesting one from Citigroup right here. Check this out. Citigroup predicts that 80 times an 80x explosion in tokenization forecasts a timeline for mass adoption of digital assets. Holy cow, we've been talking about mass adoption of digital assets forever, but I've always said that, anytime you guys move, you move all money off, you move what kind of a digital asset off an exchange, your heart drops for a second. You're like, it's not here. And you're like, well, you got to wait 4 seconds. Well, I've waited 4 seconds. Where is it? You make a mistake. There's no helpline. There's no customer experience when you deal with digital assets. You move Bitcoin, you better be sure you got the right address, the right wallet address. Sometimes when you move XRP, you need that next address. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong. Sure, you can send a small amount, but you might send the next amount that's wrong. Until we make it easy, this is where I'm on board with what Brian Brooks, when he was the comptroller over here, the currency, when he floated the idea and enacted the fact that banks could custody crypto, because people ultimately, if you want to trust the bank, now would it be FDIC insured? Probably not. It may be a better place than you keeping it on your ledger. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying for most people, it may be a better bet. It's not a far stretch from no one thinks, hey, I'm keeping all my money under the mattress. You want some of it to be liquid. You want it to be in multiple places. But when you think about that, like, how does that actually look? So I think for a lot of people would feel more comfortable if they could press a button and know it's at their bank. And when they wanted to take it out or they wanted to buy something with it, it'd be a little bit easier. And that's ultimately what we're going to need. It's going to have to become easier. It's getting easier. It's easier than it was 5-10 years ago, but it's going to have to get a lot easier for this to make really any sense on a global nature. So Citibank, which is massive, it's a massive U.S. bank, one of the top 5 banks here. They think that blockchain and crypto are likely destined for this mass adoption and hyper growth. And a new report titled Money, Tokens, and Games, Blockchain's Next Billion Users and Trillions. Did I just say trillions? Where's Jeff? That's his department. No, trillions in value. I like trillions, though. You've got billions, and now we've got trillions. Trillions in value. Citi analysts say that since blockchain is more complex than any other widely adopted technology, something I just touched on there, its trajectory to mass adoption has been a little bit slower. And here's a quote. The potential for tokenization via blockchain has been talked about as being transformative for the past few years, but we're not quite at that point for mass adoption. Unlike automobiles or recent innovations like ChatGPT or the metaverse, blockchain is a back-end infrastructure technology without a prominent consumer interface, making it harder to visibly see how it could be innovative. I'm not sure I 100% agree with that, but I think their point is it's on target at least, or at least close. Citi believes that mass adoption of blockchain will likely be sparked by the implementation of a central bank digital currency, which we just talked about that. And well, the rise of blockchain-based gaming projects and social media. And I really think the best chance we have right now is gaming is going to be big, right? So gaming is the next evolution. We had tokens inside of games, but I think when it gets to that next level, and it's that tokenization of what they're getting at here of everything, is going to help that wide adoption, especially on a mass scale, especially when you think about how much over time. Matt LaRoche is saying that tokenized precious metals really appeals to him. Yeah, I agree with that. Not everyone can afford 2,000 physical an ounce, but what you could get $20 worth to save. You know, and the other part of that too, and not that it hasn't been tried, but I guess it all depends on the trust there. So you tokenize it, and they're already tokenized in real estate. So exactly, you want part of a rental unit that where, let's say, the yield is anywhere from 10 to 12%, and you want a piece of that. Well, if you put in $1,000 a year, you put in 1,000, you know what that return is going to be more or less, right? It kind of gives you a little bit of an idea across the board. But again, it's a little bit on the more affordable side. So I kind of agree with what you're talking about there, Matt. And they also say that they believe we're approaching an inflection point where the promised potential of blockchain will be realized and be measured in billions of users and trillions of dollars of value. Successful adoption will be when blockchain has 1 billion plus users who do not even realize they're using the technology. This is an analogy that I make often to people, that when you get in your car and you start driving, who cares if you understand how a combustion engine works? Who cares if you understand how the battery is charged and makes your Tesla or your electric vehicle go? Nobody cares. You just know the mechanics of getting it there. And they're making a good point here. Same with a bank. I sent you money. I did this. There's no physical exchange. Nobody's handing you dollars or pesos or yuan. Nobody's doing that, right? No, Japanese yen. No, we're just simply pushing buttons. And I think when it gets that easy, now the one thing that I was always, when I first got into crypto back in 2012, 2013-ish, dabbled in the Bitcoin a little bit there. When I think about that, you know, there was the QR codes for a while. Is like, you know, QR codes come on products. It's great in a factory or for, you know, for inventory. It was a really great thing. But the best use case I've seen for QR codes is I like to go to my computer. I love to scan it. And I love to click a button. That's a lot more account honorable if you trust the QR code, right? And where it's originating. But again, that technology makes it easier. You click on it. People are used to it. It's like, hey, you want to send me Venmo? That's another way we send money in the US, is like, you know, it's just an app. Let me Venmo some money to you. It's so my PayPal, let me PayPal you money. And you guys have your own in your countries where you click a button, but it's become a trusted source. Now, Venmo and some of these other ones and PayPal have dabbled in there, but you got to make it as easy to be able to send, okay, well, you know, Matt Roche just talked about tokenizing there and how that would work with, let's say, physical gold at 2,000, you know, 1,900, 2,000 an ounce. Well, what if you fractionalize that too? What if I want to send you the equivalent of $20 that I owe you, but I want it to come out of my crypto and I want to decide where that's going to come. And when we get there, that's where I think the changeover is going to happen. And I also believe that making it that simple and easy, because right now they're landing some good points. I like where they're going with this. They say that by 2030, up to 5 trillion of CBDCs could be circulating in major economies. I actually think the play is not necessarily the CBDCs. It may be the interoperability. It may be, decentralized exchanges that are going to play that part. I'm not necessarily sure that anybody outside of a regular country is interested in somebody else's central bank digital currency. Again, I don't know. We'll have to see how that pans out. We'll have to keep a close eye on that. I'm just not sure. I'm not 100% convinced that's the way it goes. What else do we have in the grab bag here? This is another fantastic story. Let's look at this. Pulling it up. I love this right here. This one. Here, let's go to this. Let me open these two up. Let me just get these suckers ready here. But this right here, I sometimes think we forget how important this is. But Wheezy at Nerd Nation Unbox tweeted this out and said, Uphold never delisted XRP, and now they hold 2 billion plus XRP in their reserves. You know, this is a great story because Uphold didn't bend the knee. Uphold said, hey, there's no clarity. It hasn't been decided whether or not XRP is actually a security. So why would we do anything? But no, not the other people. No, not Coinbase. No, they didn't do that. If you look at Uphold, a leading digital financial services platform. Let's see. Here we go right here. PSA, public service announcement. This was a tweet by Uphold. Uphold never delisted XRP. We've always been there for the XRP community. And I give big props to them because they didn't bend the knee. They stood tall. They said, And you know what's so funny about it? Let's think about this. I mean, they're not your typical exchange anyway, but did anybody come after Uphold? I mean, they're still selling XRP every single day. People are buying XRP from there. Did anybody come after them? That's interesting, isn't it? Weird how that happens. But I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure it's nothing. There's so many stories. I was chatting up a storm here. Let's see. This one is a good one. I saw this from the Bearable Bull. I thought this is a really powerful tweet. I thought it really deserved to be read here because I think all of us can relate to at least some parts of this tweet, if not all of it. Maybe not all of it, but some of us can. Just for me personally, I've seen saw two friends yesterday. Both of them lost a loved one, lost their brother and lost their sister respectively. That's a lot. That's a lot going on at one time, right? And knowing two friends that have had people pass. Bearable Bull said, I had a horrible event occur yesterday and I want to post something to my followers. Past few years have been difficult on everyone. The XRP army had their profits destroyed by an unjust and corrupt lawsuit. They closed the world for 2+ years. They forced injections that didn't work on us. I was forced to move my home because of it. I questioned elections and I was censored and demonetized for it. I entered into a dark state when my friend killed himself a week after I was censored. I know many people that took their lives over the past few years, and it really saddens me. We're in the middle of a tragic war, massive political division in the US, crypto collapsed by 90 to 95%. And now we have this financial crisis looming that'll tip many people over the edge. I'm taking a moment and to ask everyone to pray, breathe, take a step back, and appreciate everything that you have. Life's hard, but it's such a blessing that it can be easily taken away. We've all made it through these unprecedented times, and you're all amazing for it. You're all powerful beyond belief, and I pray for greatness for everyone. I'm even more motivated and disciplined in life now than I've ever been, as I know tomorrow is not guaranteed. I'm not perfect. I do my absolute best every day, and I hope, if nothing else, I can be a positive light in the world. With that being said, take that risk, take action, be bold, disobey injustice, fucking go all in on life, because what I know for a fact is that you'll never get back if you don't. I thought that was great. And I had to read the F4 because it really worked in that scenario right there. But I have to say, Bearable Bull, we had him on here. It's been a while since we've had him on there. But you know what? I mean, I anybody that can put something like this on there, I have a lot of respect for. And honestly, guys, it is tough. There is a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of tragedy within your own personal lives. Things are constant. It seems like you can't get a breath, right? It's like over here, there's incoming. Over here, there's incoming. Everybody's coming after you. Your crypto's exploding. Your investments are down. But you know what? Keep the faith, because it's all cyclical and it does turn around. I love his message here. I think it's a very, very good one. And I probably don't have anything more to say on that. I would just say it's right here. This is it. XRP Market Says, well said. Sophie said, nice. Jim D, let's see. Yes. Michael Murphy says, amen. And what else we have here? Jeff says, good shit. There you go. Jeff, good to see you. Did you just sneak in there under the thing? Good to see you, man. Jeff says, good shit. And I think right there we should end the show. I've got a bunch more stuff, but man, after reading that, I think the best thing to do is to go out there, make it your own, right? Take the risk, make it happen. You know what? You're always, as they say, when you look back in life and you look back 5 years, 10 years, you're not going to regret the things you've done. You're going to regret the things you didn't do. So take the chance now. Believe in yourself. Know that you have the energy to do it, and know that you got a lot of people out there supporting you, and you can always reach out. There's always somebody out there, because, man, these are dark days. But that's why we do this show. That's why Jeff and I come in here. We do this show. Why? Because of you guys, because you make it worth it. You make it worth our while. There's always a show going in there, a show within a show, within a show, within a subgenre, within a niche. And it's a niche inside of a niche inside of something, which is the other show that goes on inside the comics. So it's really good. Yeah. Nay, great shit, says Oscar. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Bearable Bull. I wanna commend him on that post. It's one of the best posts I've seen. And again, it kind of like sums up what we've all been through, but just keep going, man. Just like I had to sit through that insufferable movie with Dory, what was that fish called? And that Pixar movie where just keep swimming, just keep swimming. When you got kids and you got to sit through that stuff and you're like, okay, this is the 4,000th time I've seen this movie. And then you got those birds going, mine, oh gosh. But and then some of that stuff sticks and you give an analogy on a podcast, you're like, you remember that time Dory's like, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. It's so silly, but that's it. That's one of the positives that can come out of all this. You guys do it. Very hydroponics, Alan says, you did make good toilet paper, Jeff. I don't know what's going on with that comment. Nemo, there you go. Thank you, Fernando. Fernando, yeah, Finding Nemo. That's right. Mine. I love those damn birds. Nemo. Hans got it as well. In Search of Nemo. I think it was Finding Nemo, right? Finding Nemo. Chip, you owe us 50 more minutes airtime. Do a tardy start. Well, the reason I was tardy was because I got the thumbnail up and I had a late night at the office today. So that was part of it. I do owe you guys more time, but I did do bonus time last time on Saturday, and maybe we'll do some more. I can't, but maybe Jeff will do some bonus time this week. I think Jeff has a little bit of a window there. Maybe Jeff, I don't know if you're still listening in. Maybe you can do 15 minutes and give that 15 minutes back of bonus time. I did start a little bit late, but sometimes, guys, I need to make sure that everything's ready to go. And don't worry about that. I'll pass it off to Jeff. Jeff will get it to you. I'm waiting for him to chime in here. He's probably not here. Dan always forgets things. Darcy, good night, everyone. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that. Matt, gotta have a movie line up your sleeve. Yeah, I usually do have a movie line up your sleeve. That was the one I had tonight, but maybe it's a better one in the future. We'll see. But anyway, guys, I will see you from Jeff and I. See you guys in the next one. We'll be back here on Saturday morning, 8 a.m. I don't know what time that is in Australia, but it's 12, 13, 14 hours, but it'll be Saturday night for you guys. Smash those likes on the way out. If you haven't done that already and you're listening, go ahead. Before you get out of here, smash the like. Drop a comment in the comments, not in the chat, but drop it in the comments. That helps tickle the Google, the algorithm. And also, too, if you're not getting notifications, you can subscribe, unsubscribe, and make sure when you subscribe again, you click that notification bell. Sometimes you got to reactivate that if you're not getting them. So appreciate that one. Moneybags, good shit, he says. Peace out, fam. Hans loaded. Have a good one. Oscar, guys, we will see you on the next one. Chip. Ow. See you guys.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.